Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
Hey guys, this is your co-host Ashley, Gorilla Girl filmmaker, lunar goddess, and cinephile.
Hey y'all, this is your guest ghost host Lila Kay. I'm coming at you from the Mile High to bring you chills and thrills.
And I'm your co-host John Thomas, ghost hunter, super smartass, and film lover extraordinaire.
What's up, ghouls, gals, and all my planchette-loving pals? In today's episode, we'll be talking about spirit and Ouija boards. Do these boards really work? Are you really communicating with spirits? Or are your friends just playing a trick on you? Join us and our very special guest to find out.
But first, a word from our network sponsor.
Are you looking for more awesome podcasts? Head on over to withoutyourhead.com for access to the Without Your Head podcast network, where you'll find a variety of podcasts sure to keep you entertained and coming back for more.
You laugh every time you do that.
I know, because she
Every
makes me
single
laugh
time.
every time. All right, welcome back, everybody. Like Ashley said, we do have a very special guest today. It is actually tomorrow, where she is from. We have Lindy coming all the way from Australia. Thank you, Lindy, for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. This is very exciting. Welcome.
Thank you.
We also have our awesome guest host, ghost host, Lila. Welcome back, Lila.
Thank you so much. Yeah, ghost host kind of sticks now. It was a accident, but now it's
I like it.
it's
Works.
pretty solid.
Ghost host. It's our ghost host, our resident ghost
Yes.
host.
Spooky.
It's very fitting considering that we are talking about spirit and Ouija boards today.
Oh, what a good segue that was.
Aw, thank you. I sometimes know what I'm doing. So, let's just jump right in. Ouija boards. Who here has played with a Ouija board?
I have.
Yes. Definitely.
Lindy's like, oh, yep.
Yep.
So, researching this topic was really interesting because I think as much as I have had an aversion to Ouija boards as I've been older, the history behind it was really fascinating. Like, I found myself just reading article after article about the history of it. It was pretty cool, the origins of it. Do you guys know the origins of the Ouija board?
I do not.
Well, I actually opened up a brick and mortar Seance Parlour here in my hometown. I live in a tiny little town in Victoria, Australia, which is pretty spooky. Like it's very it's still very vintage looking. We've got all the same structures as 1700s and whatnot.
Very much like a Stephen King vibe.
Yes. So I thought, why not? Because I'm a big spiritualist and communicate with spirit and whatnot. So I opened up my own seance parlour in town, and it was actually quite popular until I had to close it down for reasons, the current reasons.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it was very. I've got a really large board. We'd do table tipping and things like that. So I'd take it back to the Victorian times because that's ultimately when spirit boards become a thing. They were talking boards before they were Ouija boards.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a Victorian back in the 1800s when they become well known, I suppose, when the Civil War broke out and a lot of people died. So they sort of come back to. They used the talking board back then as a form of communicating with their deceased, just to heal their grieving hearts, I guess. So that's kind of the background on that before it was painted to the Ouija board.
Yeah, I found it interesting that like it was the phenomenon of like trying to communicate with spirits was already just like raging throughout Europe before it crossed over here, and then it was like you said, with like the Civil War and a lot of deaths occurring, it kind of jumped the ocean and became popular here. But I found it interesting that the Fox sisters were the one who kind of caused that surge in spiritual, communication popularity with the knockings, like on the wall, talking to spirits with something knocking on the wall in response. would terrify me, honestly. Like, if I'm just sitting in a room and I start hearing a knock on the wall and it's responding to my questions, like, let's say it's real and their knocks that they were experiencing were real communication with spirits, like, that's terrifying. How did they even, like, happenstance upon that? Like, I'm hanging out there and just suddenly I'm hearing knocking. Like, that's, and it, like, knock once if you're a ghost. I don't know. I don't know. Could you imagine that? Just sitting on your couch and you're just chilling in a room that shouldn't, like, there shouldn't be someone knocking on the other side, right? Like your closet or something. Just suddenly you start hearing knocking and it's like, And it's not pipes because you're talking to it. Like, is there someone in there? Knock twice. Knock, knock. Like, oh, shit.
Hang on a second. Wasn't expecting that.
Someone call the Ghostbusters. So, yeah, I did find that interesting. I had never heard of the Fox sisters. And I found it really cool. They're two separate, like, it's just the words people use when they're writing these articles. Like, there's the main article, the history of the Ouija board. And then there's a second one that's like, the dark history of the Ouija board. And it's like, ooh, what's that? I'm clicking on that. And really, it's more like dark when it just comes to human nature. Like, this guy who is given credit, Charles Kennard, for creating, like, the Ouija board that we're used to seeing with, like, the Parker brothers, actually created it with this coffin maker. And I don't know how to say his last name, like Reich, something like that, Reiche. And this coffin maker, it was like furniture maker turned coffin maker. They shared the same, like, workspace building, and they ended up collaborating on a talking board. And they came up with the concept that we see, that, you know, the numbers and the letters and the words on the board with the planchette. And it gets, like, solidified. It looks good. And then the Kennard guy moves out to Baltimore and sells it as his own. And it's just like, how rude.
But not uncommon. I mean, that happens with a lot of inventions and a lot of things that you think are going to be big because someone's got to beat the other to it.
Yeah. And he got his investors, the Elijah Bond, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm surprised, like, they really did strike when the iron was hot, because I want to say he moved out to Baltimore in 1890, and then they started selling it in, 1891, and it just picked up like hotcakes. And it's interesting. But does anybody know what Ouija means?
Yes, I know it. Let me get there.
He's like, I have notes. I'll ask the Google.
Right. No, I mean, well, when, they were all sitting around trying to figure out a name for it, the Ouija board supposedly spelled out Ouija, and they asked what it meant and said good luck.
I find it interesting that if you look it up on Wikipedia, I think people give meanings to things to make it less scary. So they don't want to believe that the board named itself. So they're like, it's two words put together, one French and one German for yes. And it's like, okay. But then you have the other people who want to put the other, like, logic behind it. And they're like, no, she had a locket on her that said Ouija on it with a woman's face on it. So she got it from that. And it's, scam to everybody. But I don't know. Maybe it was guided through the board, and maybe it was her subconsciously pulling out a name that was, in the back of her mind, which was on her necklace. It's something she sees every day, and she subconsciously, like, moved, the planchette, and that's what came out. Or maybe the board really did want to be called Ouija. I don't know. For good luck. Like, good luck to you. I said, good day, sir. So
good luck in whatever way you need it.
Well, the audio motor effect is what the unconscious or subconscious mind is, the involuntary physical movement. Mm-hmm. So it could have been, well, that's the logical side of it.
Logic it away.
If we want to, be logical about it, it could possibly be an unconscious or subconscious word that she wanted to, put out there, but we shall never know.
And I always we've talked about some topics here where it's like it could why not both? It could be both. It could be a subconscious thing,
absolutely,
or it could be a connection, or maybe it's a third thing. Maybe our subconscious is tied to an external collective consciousness. And so by tapping into that, we actually are traveling out to other, consciousnesses of human or non-human connections. So There was, what was it? There was a study that they did where they gave a bunch of college students like these Ouija boards, and they had them take a test, not the same test, and they got 50 to 55% of the questions right. And then they gave them a board a little while later and gave them a different test. And they got, I want to say 65% correct. And they were able to repeat those results quite a few times. And, the scientists ultimately said kind of what you did, that, they're tapping into their unconscious mind, their subconscious that has more answers than we realize that we carry within us, because it's not in our frontal lobe. And so, I found that interesting. But I also think, maybe it is that. Maybe it is we have some answers in us that we don't automatically remember when we're pressured. And that Ouija board was maybe a placebo effect into diving into that unconscious mind. Or maybe diving into that unconscious mind, we are tapping into a deeper connection with maybe something external to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you mentioned something, Lindy, and I wanted to circle back. Did you say something about tipping tables?
Oh, table tipping, yes.
Table tipping, what is that?
Yeah. Well, it's back to the Victorian spiritualism sort of thing. The way I would do it, the modern way, I tried to do it as Victorian as possible, because that's what I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be a Victorian sort of spiritualism experience. So I just had a small table, and we'd all sit around it. And back in the Victorian era, everyone would chant or sing a particular song to sort of get the vibration and the movement and the energy up, because the higher the frequency and the higher the vibration, it's easier for spirit to communicate. So once everybody's in that collective and we're all sort of high vibing, it makes it easier for them to sort of to come through. And I remember my first very experience was actually doing it in my seance parlour. I'd never done it before, so I was kind of like, okay, spirit, you've got to show me that this is real, and it was the most insane experience I've ever experienced. We were just sitting around. Our fingertips were literally on the table, and it wasn't a light table by any means. It was quite solid. So we had it's kind of like a poker table, if you can sort of imagine, like a round poker table. We had our fingertips on it, and we finished doing our chanting and whatnot, and literally the table was literally on one leg at one point, and our fingertips were only on it. So there's no logical explanation. I was kind of and even though I'm a very spiritual person and I communicate with spirit and whatnot, it's still I was like, how the heck is this happening? You kind of still got to have that sense of questionability. You still got to question, I feel like that's very important when you're doing any sort of spiritual communication. You need to have that. So yeah, I was very taken aback by what was actually happening. I was like, holy wow, it was really, it was amazing.
Yeah, I don't blame you. That would definitely have holy wowed me.
Yeah.
Well, it's like Ashley said, when you're asking somebody to knock and then you actually hear it and you're like, wait, be careful what you ask for, because it's going to happen.
And I do like that you point out going at this with questionability, with skepticism, but also open-mindedness is very good in that, this could actually be happening. However, I'm still going to try to go through those logical steps of, am I actually experiencing this right now, or what could be causing it? And I do love that you approach that situation with that sense of skepticism.
Yeah.
It's a healthy level of skepticism.
Right.
Definitely, yep.
Something you said, actually, you're the first person that is I've been trying for a few episodes to put the words together to what I was trying to say, and you just hit it so nail on the head, which is punny considering we were talking about a coffee maker. Sorry. So you mentioned something about the singing to get the vibrations up, because that's what spirits respond to, that high vibrational, that high vibe. And
yes.
I noticed that, like, we've talked about that on a few different episodes where, like, for example, in like voodoo rituals, to activate a lot of these rituals or ceremonies or to start them to invoke the spirits, it's actually singing. You start by a song that you
Yes.
connect to. So it's not like sing a random song, it's one that you personally connect to that raises your vibration. And that invokes the spirits. And I think we've talked about with like Native American rituals, you know, the chanting to invoke the spirits. And so I think it's really interesting. We have so many different cultures and belief systems that all practice the same kind of vibrational resonance that begins with singing. And there's something there.
Yes. I agree. I find that if I chant, like chanting's very powerful. Like that, you know, it's extremely powerful. If you continuously chant something over and over and over and over and over, it's a unconscious and subconscious thing as well, you know. But yeah, you're raising the frequency and the vibration, which is where the spirit, especially if you're wanting to connect to the good ones, you know, like that's where all the light spirit is, you know. They're on a different plane to what we are. Then we have the lower vibrational spirit, which they don't really care, you know. So that it's important to go into any of this with good intention, obviously. But if you're in that mindset where you're only going to communicate with something of low vibration or go into it with fear, of course you're going to communicate with something that's not so great, you know. I think it's very important to make sure you go into it knowing that or wanting, like putting it out there basically, that, you know, you want to speak to the higher people or the higher spirits of light. You don't want anything of lower vibration to come through. So, yeah, that's my take on it.
So it's like setting your intention or your...
Absolutely. Yeah.
But also clearing yourself, because it sounds like you said even if you come in with the best of intentions, if you're afraid, that's going to knock your vibration down. So trying to just clear that fear a bit as well.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, I think it's really good that you talk about having good intentions when you approach something new, especially with something that is so unknown and you don't understand, you know, what's going to exactly happen. You don't have any way to predict this. And I feel like Ouija boards, spirit boards get a lot of bad rep because people do come at them with negative intentions sometimes, where they're like, I just want to see something. I just want to scare people. You know, I just want something to come through so I can get a reaction. And then I feel like that's where you get these, you know, these lower spirits, these negative spirits. But if you come at it with good intentions and you are genuinely curious, then I feel like you have a better chance of having a good experience instead.
Yes, exactly.
What is the difference? And I'm not trying to be cheeky, but what is the difference between like a momentary possession and like using a Ouija board? Because to me, when I think about like the basics, the fundamentals of what's occurring when you're using like a Ouija board or a talking board where you're channeling something through to allow it to control your hands or your body, even if it's for a moment, like what is the difference? How does that not become like a full spiritual possession?
I'm pretty certain that it again, all comes down to intention. If you've got that, how can I word it? That's why it's important to say to people, don't go into anything like this when you're under the influence of drugs or alcohol or anything like that, because once your vibration is low, it gives you that open ability for spirit to actually to enter you. Like that is a thing. Like it sounds strange, but it is actually a thing. Whereas if you go into a you know, a strong-minded willingness, and you say to them, this is my intention, I wish for you to communicate with me, not intentionally like through me. Like you've always got to give them that permission, and you've always got to set those boundaries, because, you know, spirit can do what they want otherwise. But we're stronger than them, you know. People don't realize that, you know, like we are the stronger. I believe we are absolutely stronger than any spirit. So if you do go into it intention, I give you this permission to do this, and this. I don't give you permission to do this. You know what I mean? Is that answering the question? I'm not sure.
No, absolutely. It's setting the intention and the boundaries so
Yeah.
that you're being very clear. Look, you can kind of guide that movement, but you cannot take me over.
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah,
I've always been curious
absolutely.
about that. And I know pop culture didn't help that. We see the movies like The Exorcist and Ouija, and it's like that does not help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's like kids accidentally getting possessed. Like, oh my goodness. Maybe kids shouldn't play with those.
Yeah. Well, the fear, that all began from the 20th century, the fear. Like the talking boards were fine up until then. And then the Catholic Church and the horror movie industry sort of created that fear by rebranding it as a doorway to demonic possession or you know. So it's kind of, it's all, fear is quite the interesting emotion.
It definitely does something to the vibrations and like our energy wavelengths that we not only send out, but we receive.
Definitely, yep.
I think we talked about that with paranormal investigation too, right?
Yeah.
Where like if you go into an investigation with that fear and that negative energy vibrating out, those are potentially the spirits that are going to reveal themselves to you or respond to you.
Right. Like Lindy was saying, don't go in, under the influence of drugs, alcohol, any of that stuff. That's the same with paranormal investigating. Unfortunately, I do know some people that think it's cool to do that, and yet they freak out every single time something happens. Mm-hmm. So they're kind of calling it, on themselves. And yeah, that's a big no-no.
Yeah, so question for you guys then, since we're talking about the horror genre and we're talking about pop culture's influence on like the negative connotations with the boards, if you have that timeline, when have you noticed it going from Ouija boards, spirit boards, to a game? Instead of using these boards, you're playing with these boards, and where that distinction came from. So pretty much when did they become toys that you can buy in literally a toy section at the store?
The moment that Parker Brothers bought them and marketed them as a family entertainment game. Like literally it's called family entertainment game.
It says ages 8 to whatever, and so you can be 8 years old to summon a demon, quote unquote, but you have to be like now 21 to buy cigarettes here in the States. So yeah,
as a person who's pretty unfamiliar with boards, I've not used one personally. I just think it's very interesting that they're used to communicate, but now they're like, oh, it's just a fun little silly game, which can have, negative repercussions if not taken seriously.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that as well. Going into it thinking, okay, this is just a game. You do have to take these things seriously. Like any form of spiritual communication, be that, spirit ghost hunting or whatever you shall call it. This is a serious thing. If you go into it not feeling so serious, that's when obviously, things can happen.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think too, like with the Ouija board especially, it became marketed as a game that families can play together. And I think also when it became more of a game was not just with the marketing, but also the more that our own lifespans increased. So less and less people were dying in their 40s and early 50s. So we're less stressed about like death. And we also see like the wars, like the World War I, Civil War, everything is like kind of in our past a bit. Death didn't seem so on our doorstep. So I think that when we kind of moved away from that a bit, and that fear of death and wanting to know what's on the other side wasn't as prevalent in the front of everybody's minds, and dealing with that massive grief, kind of like Lindy mentioned earlier, is when it became more of like, ooh, now let's just see if we could scare ourselves. And if we're being honest, this tends to be a game that kids play a lot, like at slumber parties.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like kids like to scare themselves. We tell campfire stories and ghost stories, and we talk to ghosts apparently. And it just like, I don't know. I'm not gonna lie, I am not a fan of any kind of uncontrolled communication through a veil that I don't understand what's on the other side, because we get deceived by human beings. Like, it's super easy for like sociopaths and manipulators and narcissists to come in and just bamboozle us. So if it's like, if another human being can deceive us, what what kind of spirit or what we assume is a spirit responding to us. Like, we don't really know what is actually responding to us. So, like, what kind of damage of deception can be done on that end? Maybe that's just me being influenced by horror and pop culture, but I do wonder about that. I am uncomfortable with what I can't, I guess, see or feel to an extent. Because I felt some spirits without needing a board. I've felt entities and I'm like, whoa, you are no good. I don't know what you were, because I don't think you were ever human, but I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah. I just make sure, like I do believe that it's all in the way that you perceive yourself and the technique before going into it. And I always believe, and I always have believed, that I'm protected spiritually and energetically. So I've never had a negative experience in all of my, I've been doing this sort of stuff since I was 10 years old, like I've never ever had a negative experience in any of that. I've felt weird, like there has been moments where I've walked into a building or something of that nature, and I'm like, okay, this is a bit, this is a bit odd. But I make sure I always set that intention then, call in all my protectors and all my spiritual protectors, and, it sort of disappears. So they know who they can go up against, like we are most definitely the most powerful. We're more powerful than what they are, like I mentioned previously. So it's definitely important to go into it knowing that I am powerful. No one or anything can harm me. I'm in this for me and for the highest good of me. So that should be a great way to bring forward, the more positive aspects of it, I guess.
I think that's so powerful, because I envy that, because it's like, man, to know yourself that well and to believe in yourself and the spirit world that well, to believe you're protected. It's like, that is amazing. It reminds me of Fright Night. I don't know if you guys have seen Fright Night.
Yeah.
But where, like, Jerry Dandridge is laughing at him, and he's like, you have to have faith for that to work. And it's just like, he's not wrong. I think you have to have faith in yourself for things to work. But, oh man, how many of us do not actually have faith or believe in ourselves that strongly?
Ooh, ouch. I didn't come here for therapy.
Yeah.
I'm just going to throw this out there real quick. I think Ashley finds a way to throw Fright Night in almost every single episode that we do, because it's her favorite movie besides The Lost Boys, which I'm sure that'll come up eventually. I love you, Ash, but I just have to give you crap
It
about
probably will. Those things stick in my brain.
Hey, whatever works and whatever helps you connect and get you going, I like it. I just think it's funny that we always go back to either one of those two.
Well, you want to tie in the Lost Boys. According to Lindy, it's like spirits have the same as like vampires, where it's just like, you weren't invited. None of that works in here.
There you go. You're done now. You're done. You got it, Ashley. We're done.
I did it. I hit both of them.
Good job, Ash.
No, but I think that it is a really good stance to have, and it's something that I haven't thought of. Like, yes, we do have that power, and yes, we are the ones who can set those boundaries. And if we do not give spirits permission to do certain things, then they don't have that permission. They can't. And I think why people are so scared of spirit boards, Ouija boards, is that they believe that those spirits have the power. And that's what you see in a lot of horror movies, is that those spirits have power.
Yeah.
And so it twists our perception here outside of the silver screen of who's in charge. So I think that that's a really interesting thing to throw in there. Thank you for that, Lindy.
You're welcome.
I think what alarms a lot of people in that is that we can be impacted by the spirit world, but we don't see the impact that we have on the spirit world. So it's like, you've got power over me to an extent because I can feel your influence on me, but I don't think we realize we don't know the influence we have on that world because we're not in that world, so we don't know. And I think with that comes a level of like powerlessness kind of feeling.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I never thought about that. I like that.
Yeah.
That's coming from our own biased opinion of we run everything and not worrying about what else is happening beyond our perspective.
Yeah, we don't know what we're doing to shake things up over there by channeling these boards.
Wow. Yeah, that gives me a lot to think about for sure.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a board. It's just a plastic, a piece of with words and letters on it and a plastic planchette. And there's so many different variations of spirit boards and Ouija boards out there. You could draw one on a piece of paper and it would still be just as effective, because I think the power really does come, the channeling comes from us. The power's not in the board, the power's within us to open ourselves. And I think that's the terrifying part to me, is that I'm opening myself and saying, hey, come at me, bro.
Hopefully not just like that, though.
I mean, it's Ashley, so
You
probably.
never know.
Depends on her mood that day.
It's true. I might be tired of the hauntings, but I'm like, all right, look, I'm writing this out. You and I are going to have a conversation because I'm evicting you. Like, can you imagine on the other side, they have their own version of Ouija board and they're like, who's up today?
Right? Which person am I going to talk to today? Here we go.
I don't want to talk to Ashley. She's always telling me to come at her, bro. I don't even know what that means.
I'm from the 1700s.
Oh, gee. I love it.
So you said you have a seance shop, Lindy, and that kind of goes with the vibe of your town.
Yeah.
With your shop, is it, like, I don't know that world too terribly much. So, like, I know the metaphysical world, but I've never been to, like, a seance shop or anything like that. Is it difficult to find what you need to be able to conduct, or is it just because it is so unique to the individual, you could really get, like, a poker table with a tablecloth because it's really what is channeling through you and who attends?
I do feel like it matters who the participants are. Like, if you've got someone that's, you don't necessarily have to be a medium per se, but somebody that's extremely open, there needs to be someone conducting or someone sort of in charge, as you will, that's sort of very, very open to the spirit world. You don't need to be fully mediumship and have all these abilities and whatnot, but I do feel that there has to be somebody in that moment that is extremely open to sort of help those energies and the communication flow. Does that make sense? Because I had participants in one session and they were extremely closed off. I could feel it in their energy. I could feel it as soon as they walked in the door. They were petrified. They paid for this seance, but they were absolutely petrified, and there was barely any communication whatsoever. It was mainly me doing all the channeling in the end, because I'm like, okay, that they've paid for this seance and nothing's happening, and it's because their energy was so closed off and so shut down that nothing was really happening. So it sort of just landed all on me at that point.
That has to be really exhausting.
Yeah, it was. It was very. That was actually one of my lowest moments in the seance parlor, because I was like, wow, like, this is quite tiring. Like, if people come in and they're open and they're like, yeah, let's, and they're laughing and having a good time, and because when you're sort of open and happy and whatnot, that's when the communication flows a lot better. So there needs to be that person that's sort of a lot more open, or the conductor that sort of helps sort of bring things forward, I guess. Like, that's my experience. I don't know of any other experiences, but I've found that that's been the way for me.
Now, if you have a group with a lot of open people, like open energetically, do you then want, like, a grounding buffer person to kind of keep that group tethered, or is it good to have a lot of open individuals?
Well, what I always do before conducting a seance is I always ground everybody. We do a bit of a ritual, then we sort of do like the bit of the chanting and whatnot. So I've got a bit of a process that I do to make sure that there's, everything's sort of balanced and sort of in line, so things sort of run smoothly, so we won't have these hiccups where there's, scary spirits or whatnot coming through and attacking people.
Do you have safety measures of, like, if someone is vibrating low because they do get scared or something like that, and it does draw in, like, a very volatile spirit? Do you have something that you have in place, or some, like, ceremony you do to help kind of stop that, like an emergency break?
Yes, absolutely. I always obviously I show them, this is all the logical stuff, but the exit signs and whatnot, always tell me if you're feeling uncomfortable, and then we will just stop the seance there, and I'll sort of conduct another sort of a ritual. I've never had to do it, but I've always had those in place just in case.
Yeah.
I've always had seances that run extremely smoothly. I've had the ones that are really low in communication, and they're the ones that I've found are the people that are very blocked off and petrified. They're curious, obviously, because they've purchased a ticket, but then you've got the other people that are really open, and they're the fun ones. They're the ones that actually things actually happen, like the tables freaking tip, and the planchette's going all over the place, and a lot of things. And then there was actually one where there was sort of mist actually occurring in the room, like there was a bit of a mist behind someone, and there was a couple of them. It wasn't just me that witnessed it. There was a couple of them, and they're like, what is that?
What is that exactly when mist appears? What is that?
Well, I would say that that's spirit trying to come forth in the physical. They've obviously got enough energy to try and communicate in a different way. Like they were obviously trying to communicate in a different way to let them know, okay, this is real. You know what I mean? Spirit have got to have a very large amount of energy in order to physically appear in front of somebody. For that spirit to particularly, to mist up and to make some kind of a fog or whatever it was, the mist it was, they've obviously had a lot of energy at that time. But we do produce a lot of energy before the seance anyway. Like I said, we do the rituals and the chanting, and there's I make a bit of a process before we get into it to make sure they get the best of that experience,
Yeah, I think I've only ever seen like a misty fog start to come up once, and I freaked the hell out. I'm like, I gotta go.
I think that's really amazing, though, to like have that happen in front of you and to see that like mist form, because like you said, like that's a lot of energy. We don't know, going back to what Ashley was saying earlier about, we don't know the effects of the, spirit world. We don't know how much energy that's actually taking from them, but that can't be a lighthearted task to like try to make yourself visible. So I wonder what effect that has on the spirit who's like, okay, I did this. I'm tired now.
I need a nap.
Let's call it. I'm out. Have a great day.
Right. I mean, as a ghost hunter, paranormal investigator, whatever, I mean, I have never seen anything like that. And, we always ask, hey, can you show yourself, or can you, again, going with the knocks or whatever. But I have never seen a mist or anything like that form. And Lila and I used to go with Luana's team to do the events that we had at the Melting Pot restaurant and stuff. And again, with the lighthearted energy, everybody is feeling good, and you actually get more communication, more activity than when you have the few people that are just like, oh, this is all bull crap, blah, blah, blah. And we've had a lot of that. And we've had nights where nothing happened. And then we've had nights that were like literally the next night, everything was just happening. We were getting knocks, we were getting touches, we were getting this, we were getting that. And it was amazing, and it's all about the energy. Yeah,
absolutely. The people that are involved, hey, like I think you can tell the difference between different groups of people and people that are participating, because things happen differently each time.
Exactly.
And that's what I've put it down to. It's kind of like a poll, really,
Yeah,
like this group of people is going to, like I kind of know as soon as those people walk through the door, I'm kind of like, okay.
Magic's gonna happen.
Yeah.
You're quite literally vibe checking.
I leave it open, obviously, but, you kind of know as soon as they walk in the door how it's going to pan out, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you had people ask to contact like their previous animal pets?
No, I haven't had pets. No, I've never had people ask for pets. It's normally, I always say, like, you come into a seance and, for example, they're wanting to speak to Aunt Martha. I say, okay, well, it's not guaranteed that Aunt Martha is going to come through. It could be Granddad Harry that wants to come through instead. Like, he's obviously got the message. So don't come into it with expectations of who you're going to speak with. It's the actual spirit that wants to communicate or has something to communicate, you know. If Aunt Martha might be at peace and she couldn't be bothered, you know, like, whereas Granddad Harry, he might have communication. He might have something to say. So he'll come forward first. So no expectations, just sort of just go into it open-minded and see what comes through, I guess.
Yeah.
Can I get weird?
Sure. I
Do
love weird.
They know I like to get weird because I get really weird with like theories. So let's just go on a weird roller coaster. Let's say that this is going to take a lot of assumptions. Let's say that we are connected to this collective consciousness. And a lot of our memories of these individuals, whether it be Aunt Martha or Uncle Henry or Grandpa Todd, are stored in these memories. So when we dive into that chanting and vibrational, we're chanting and we're vibrating, we're actually putting ourselves into a meditative state. So we're in a trance-like state, and we tap into those unconscious memories and those collective consciousnesses. So whatever we need to hear at the time, like whatever we're working through, whether it be psychologically or energetic, you know, trauma, whatever is going on, whatever we need to have brought out externally and then reflected back to us is what we receive or what we experience. What if by using Ouija boards and spirit boards, we're essentially just doing like an energetic psychological therapy session that is somewhere between the metaphysical, the spirit world, but what we call the spirit world is really our connection to this energetic consciousness that we all just kind of connect into and come from.
Yes.
That was weird. That was a lot of words. Sorry.
No, that actually makes a lot of sense though. Like, we will get the information of our highest good, you know, like whatever we're meant to hear at that time is what we will get. And yes, I do feel that there has to be a level of subconscious, unconscious magic going on as well. Like, I do feel that that's all interconnected. Like, everything is connected. Like, that's the weirdness of it. You know, it is, you know, it is weird. It is, yeah.
I know, like, just some of the stuff I say, I'm like, gosh, if anybody listening to this knows me in real life, they're going to be like, what the hell is wrong with you? So much, just so much. This is, I like to think of the podcast as like my personal therapy sessions, but welcome to group therapy.
I mean,
thanks for having us.
Thanks. Yes. It's like family therapy.
It does seem to be like you are like learning a lot, and I think it's really cool that you're learning a lot through all these different topics that you weren't expecting to learn. And I absolutely love watching this happen because the look on your face and everything is just amazing. I love it.
Well, I think for me, I know Lindy mentioned that she's been, you know, talking to, or not, no, that sounds weird. Lindy has been, you know, how do we want to say that? Communicating with the spirit world? Because I feel like talking to spirit sounds kind of like I'm being condescending, and I'm not. You have been connected to your metaphysical side since you were like at least 10. And for me, I feel like it's been a lifelong journey for me as well. And I've had a very, very strong fear of it because it's so volatile and it's so aggressive and it's so assertive. And I feel like the one thing I've learned over this past like year of our second season is that like, whoa, maybe my fear of it is what rang that vibration to bring those things, to continue it on. So it snowballed. And so by changing that vibration, by listening to things that like you say and what other guests have said, by kind of altering my vibrations, that might change my experience and make it something less to be afraid of and something that I feel I can control. Because up until this past few years, John knows this, I'm like, I can't control shit. I feel like I'm just an open like ghost meter. And weird stuff happens. And so it's really interesting to hear all of these tools that I never considered before that I have within my power and within myself. So yay. Thank you, Lindy.
You're welcome. Grounding is super important. It sounds like you might be a little bit ungrounded. Like, grounding is really important to sort of, ground your emotions and be in that moment, you know what I mean? Like, if you're sort of you're feeling uncontrolled and, like you feel like you're out of control, that's very ungrounding energy. So you're going to bring that into the space while you're there. So breathing, lots of heavy, like, breath work before going into something like that, and sort of chant in your mind over and over again, I am powerful. Like, although it's simple, it's actually really powerful. Like, it's a really powerful mantra, I am powerful, I am powerful. It's super, super powerful, I can't really say that anymore, but yeah.
I think that's super important. I am powerful. Like, that's...
Yeah.
I don't know how many of you have ever, like, can you look in the mirror and say that you feel powerful? So...
There are days.
Yeah.
There are days.
I feel like I'm in the state where if I looked in the mirror and tried to tell myself that, I'd probably laugh. So that's, it's all a work in progress. So then, is that what the typical, like, grounding process looks like for you? A lot of, like, breathing and chanting and things like that? Or do you have any other different processes, especially, like, based off of those different groups that you had come into your shop?
For grounding, I always recommend visualization is pretty powerful. Like, visualization and meditation sort of are always sort of, very woo-woo. Everyone speaks about it, but it's a practice thing too. The more you practice, the easier it gets. So visualizing roots coming from the bottom of your feet and grounding into the ground, but do it in a powerful way that sort of connects with you. Like, if you're visualizing roots and, you start visualizing the ocean or whatnot and you're scared of water, that's not going to work. So you need to visualize something that's powerful for you and that's going to work for you. So I always, like I said, visualize the roots grounding into the ground, and I always put up a big barrier for myself, like a big bubble, like a big gold bubble. Gold and green seem to be my favorite colors. I use them for absolutely everything. So I always visualize myself in a big gold and green bubble before I go into anything spiritual. I chant in my head over and over again, dancing, sort of get crazy, like before a seance or something like that, you always got to raise those vibrations, and music is really powerful. Like, dancing, music, creating that momentum, you know what I mean? Like, like I can feel it now as I'm speaking about it.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to explain it.
I love all of that.
Does it make sense? Like, am I making sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was actually taught the roots thing for grounding and for just relaxing and trying to do whatever I needed to do, release energy, whatever.
Yeah.
So I think it's really cool to hear somebody else actually say that. I love it. And I don't know if Lila remembers, but when she was younger, when we would go out, and yes, I took my child ghost hunting when she was like 9, whatever.
I know exactly where this is going because, yes, I do remember. Continue.
I would teach her, okay, this is how we're protecting ourselves. Imagine this energetic, like, whatever color light you want, just shooting out of you and creating a barrier around you to protect you so nothing bad can happen to you.
Yeah.
And that was just something I was taught as well, so I figured I would pass it down to her, and it worked great for me. So.
And that stuck out with me too because I remember going on investigations and things as a child, and as a child still being hesitant, still being scared of, oh my God, what did I get myself into? I followed my dad into this, and for what? But having that technique, and I can remember being outside and doing our investigation and imagining this big old white bubble, like this glowing bubble where it was like, it looked like there were flashlights and things inside, like that is how bright it was, and that was just going out.
Yeah.
So it was like this massive protection barrier, and it does stick out with me, and I do still remember that because I still carry that with me.
Yep.
To this day.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
You did good, Dad.
You know what's interesting? I was taught a technique when I was 17, and it's a visualization technique of like a mental ward or a block, right? Like, so some people visualize colors or light. I actually do what's called mathing. So I do numbers. I do math in my head. So 1 + 1 is 2 + 1 is 3. And every time I'm doing that, I'm seeing the number and it's forming like around me. Okay. So that the numbers create like a grid around me eventually as I'm doing it.
Wow.
That's awesome.
It was weird, but it was interesting because I think that's more of a block, a guard, versus something that will protect you in a way where, because I almost think that blocks off energy. So I don't know if that would be conducive to like going into like a seance or using a board. But for me, it was a protection that I still, to this day, it's like an automatic thing. 1 + 1 is 2 + 1 is 3. And then just like visualizing those numbers kind of become a grid around me in a circle. So
That's cool. I hate math, so that would never work for me.
Well,
it's simple though. It's just +1. Everything +1.
What I think is interesting about this is like, Ashley, that's a very like mathematical, technical form of protection and grounding, whereas like Lindy, you're talking about, you know, dancing and chanting and things like that, which is very much artistic. So I think you see like a good combination of arts versus, you know, science and more technical skills, and I think that that's kind of cool to see like the variation.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't like math either.
It's not like I'm doing algebra. I'm just simple math.
Can you solve this quadratic formula for me, Ashley?
Yes, I can. I think what it does with the math and why I liked it so much is that it takes you out of your fear. Because if you're having to do a math problem in your head, you're no longer focused on your panic and your fear. So it kind of reroutes you back into your body to get rid of that vibrational fear as you build that protection around yourself.
That makes sense.
Yeah. It takes your mind away from it because you're using your mind to create more numbers, to create
that
to rid more fear.
Yeah.
I get it, but it still would not work for me.
You're like, nope.
And that's okay.
Similar to what you're saying, though, Lindy. I mean, I had someone try to teach me a grounding technique where you like breathe in and then exhale the color of the light as it builds around you. That doesn't work for me. Like I try, but it's just like. But is it gold, or is it like a white gold, or is it what like? And then I get caught up on like, well, what spectrum? And like, do I really breathe out gold? And it was like, you know, I am like way overthinking that process.
Yeah. See, what I teach is whatever the first thing comes to your mind, don't overthink it because that's your conscious mind creating that. You want your unconscious or your subconscious mind to create it all for you, you know? So whatever colour you see or whatever, just go with it. Don't be like, okay, is that white? Is it grey? Is it in between? Is it black?
Exactly. That's why I landed on math. I'm like, just 1 + 1 is 2. There we go.
The numbers work.
Yeah.
Then if I have to do that while I'm drunk, I can still remember what 1 + 1 is.
I would hope so. If not, that's the sign to stop.
If I can't do 1 + 1, I'm probably not conscious anymore, in which case I'm not breathing out colors either. Like, I'm just...
Oh, man.
So is there a difference between a Ouija board and a spirit board, or are they the same thing? One is just like a brand name.
Oh yeah, it's just a brand name. I think they're all exactly the same, and the process is all exactly the same. It's just branding, I'd say.
Would a spirit board be similar to like a scrying board, and just the scrying? It's a scrying pendant versus a planchette, or are they separate things?
I also have a planchette looking thing that's got a pencil attached to it that I had made, and it's also got like a wheel attached to it as well, and it's a similar process. You'd put a piece of paper under it and you'd sort of go through the same process of communication, and then it gives the spirit the opportunity then to actually write instead of using the planchette.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So it's like a combination between automatic writing and spirit board.
Yeah, exactly.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
I was part of a subscription for this. It was like a monthly, I don't remember what it was called, but it was basically for every new moon, they would send you a box and it had like candles and whatever. But one of the items that it sent was like a cloth kind of like a Ouija board. It had the yes, the no, the numbers, but it was a little less obvious. And it came with the the pendulum, the pendant that you circle over it. And I never used it. I was like, I'll send it to Kevin, but
Yes.
because I don't think I can control my vibrations enough right now to not summon back like a demon. So, I'll leave it to the people who can control their vibration.
Feels very healthy that you know that boundary of yourself, though. That's a good thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I know my weaknesses, and it's like,
Yeah.
I'm good. I don't want to talk to Captain Howdy today. I'm probably not someone who should be playing with Ouija boards.
Probably not.
Oh, man. John, did you have anything else you wanted to add, or Lila? Any other questions?
No, I think we pretty much asked and answered all the ones that I would even have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, I love that this turned into a conversation not just about the boards themselves, but also how to control your energy and how to ground yourself and how to protect yourself. And I think that that's very important when it comes to dealing with unknowns. So I really appreciated all of the insight and hearing all of the different techniques in that. I thought that that was really amazing.
I agree with Lila, too. I think if for listeners and just in general, take heed from my boundaries. Know yourself. If you know you cannot control your vibration, or you don't feel like you are powerful and you're at risk for something vibrating back to you that you're not prepared for, don't enter this world yet. Take time. Take time to learn how to raise your vibrations. Take time to learn to build those grounding techniques and those boundaries so that you can go in and get the vibration that you're looking for. And if you are unsure, but you're still curious, there are amazing people out there like Lindy who can guide you and help you through that process.
Absolutely. That's super important.
It's okay to say no thanks.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because you don't want Captain Howdy to visit your front door. I'm just kidding. I'm joking.
She's joking, but not at the same time. Because, you really don't.
But not really.
No.
But not really. Because it doesn't have to be a demon. It could be, like, whatever it is. You just don't want something volatile or aggressive that you weren't looking for to respond back to you, that you don't know how to get rid of. If you don't know how to pull that emergency brake and to create those boundaries, there's no need to rush into it and see what comes calling back.
Yeah.
Preparedness is key.
Yeah, do your homework. Definitely.
Always be prepared.
Yes.
Yes.
Although I am not one who would want to put hands on a Ouija board because I still don't feel I'm prepared for that life. I would definitely want to go to Lindy's shop and try the table tipping.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would be down for that. I'm going to go to a
Taking
road
a
trip.
3Haunted trip.
Yep.
All right.
We're going to
Australia,
cross
here we
over to the
come.
pond. We're going to be like, Lindy, let's make magic happen. Let's make tables tip.
I love it.
Did you have any final thoughts, Lindy?
No, I think we've touched on everything, unless you have any other questions or no?
I'm sure I'll think of 50,000 more once we hit stop.
After the fact.
Yeah, but
I'm sure John will tag
of
me
course.
in something, and if anyone wants to communicate with me or contact me, feel free to do so, I guess.
Definitely.
thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So much fun.
Yeah.
Told you it was nothing that bad.
We're an easygoing crew. We're pretty we just go with the flow on topic. At least once during an episode, I am like, let's get weird.
Yes. We're going to start calling it Ashley's Weird Corner or something. I don't know. Let's do it.
What do I keep in this weird corner? I don't know.
This is just becoming a game of how many times can we say weird during this episode.
Where
We
is
should have
that
a count
power
going.
lot?
True.
Yeah,
I mean,
those are good words.
I did.
no,
There-
there's nothing wrong with that.
There is power in weird.
Yes.
That's right.
See, Ashley can't
Yeah.
hit her microphone anymore, so we can't play the drinking game. Every time Ashley hits her microphone, you take a drink.
I know, I switched it off into the stand and now I don't knock it around. Well, bring us home, Johnny.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of 3Haunted. I am your host, John Thomas.
I am Ashley Lunar Goddess.
And I'm Lila Kay.
If anybody has any questions, comments, or episode suggestions, please feel free to email us at 3hauntedpodcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't done so already, please like, follow, and all that fun stuff on all of our social media. You don't want to miss one crazy moment. Yeah, I messed that one up. Shut up.
That's okay. I think it was just subscribe. Subscribe to it all.
Subscribe. Do it all.
Hit the follow button. Until next time.